Good morning and welcome to Dorset Council's Licensing Subcommittee. Can I have an election of chairman for these hearings, please?
Yes, I'd like to propose yourself.
Thank you.
I'm happy to second Councillor Emma Parker.
Thank you, councillors. So my name is Councillor Emma Parker and I'm going to be chairing this hearing this morning. I'm just going to go through some items on the agenda, and once I've done that, I'll get everybody to introduce themselves. So do I have any apologies?
Apology for absence was received from Councillor Paul Harrison, substituted by Councillor Mike Barron.
Thank you. And councillors, do you have any declarations of interest on this application? Do we have any urgent items?
There are no urgent items.
Okay, thank you. Then I will ask to go around the room for introductions, and I will start with my fellow councillors.
Hello, Councillor Sarah Williams.
Councillor Mike Barron from Corfmullin.
Democratic Services?
John Miles, Democratic Services. I'm going to be doing the minutes for this meeting.
Good morning, I'm George Dare from Democratic Services.
Thank you. And our legal team?
Hello, I'm Phil Crowther, I'm the committee's legal advisor.
And my name's Hannah Massey and I'm shadowing Phil today.
Thank you. And then our licensing officer?
Hi, I'm Catherine Miller, Senior Licensing Officer and Report Author.
Thank you very much. And now I will go to the applicant.
Hello, I'm Adrian Peskin from Woodshedding Brewery.
Thank you. And to those that have made representations.
Hello, my name is Sally Ann Holt. I'm the Chair of Holwell Parish Council.
And I'm Patrick Jensen. I live in Peaceful Lane.
Thank you. When the agenda was sent out to you all, you would have all been in that agenda would have been how how it unfolds here this morning, how the hearing runs. Are you happy with that? Do you need me to run through that again?
Happy.
Thank you. Just want to make sure, because a lot of people aren't too sure how it all works. But you will all get your say. That's what we're all here for. Okay, so I will now go on to Catherine, who is our Senior Licensing Officer, and that is for Catherine to outline the report that we have all had and we have all read, and this will be for a new premises licence application for woodshedding at King Stag.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the hearing is to consider a new premises licence for woodshedding Peaceful Lane in King Stag. The application is for a tap room, and it is to permit anything of a similar description to that falling within E, F or G, indoors and outdoors, Monday to Sunday from midday to 2300 hours, and the sale of alcohol on and off the premises, Monday to Sunday, 12 to 2300 hours. The application form, as you see, is Appendix 1. There were 2 representations received. One's from the Parish Council and one was from an interested party. The applicant wrote to these parties to explain how he operates the premises and offered to meet them. The 2 representations and the applicant's response can be found at Appendix 2 and 3 respectively. I'd like to clarify that the Live Music Act 2012 allows a consumption of alcohol on the premises to have live and recorded music between 0800 hours and 2300 hours without a licence. There is a safeguard within the Licensing Act that at review hearing the provisions of the Live Music Act could be disapplied. There were no representations received from responsible authorities. I'd like to remind members today that the options available to them are to grant a licence subject to such conditions as the authority considers appropriate for the promotion of the licence objectives and the mandatory conditions, to exclude from the scope of the licence any of the licensable activities to which the application relates, refuse to specify a person in the licence as a designated premises supervisor, or reject the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, do you have any questions for Catherine with regards to the report?
So, no.
Ms Peskin, do you have any questions for Catherine with regards to the report?
No, I do not.
To the two that have made representations, do you have any questions for Catherine with regards to the report?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you. I will now move on to Mr Peskin, the applicant. Obviously, Ms Peskin, we've read the report and read all the information that you've given us. Is there anything that you would like to add at this time? Give us a bit more detail.
I'm not sure actually if it was sort of relayed to these people here who've made the representations, but when I initially made the application, it was under the advice that one should go for as long as hours as possible, not necessarily with the view that you would adhere to those hours. So it's just to make clear that I don't have any intention of being open from Monday to Sunday for the length of those hours. I think there was an email that went out which sort of stipulated the hours that I wanted to go for. Other than that, there's not much more than I could say, really. Okay.
I'll ask councillors if they have any questions for you, and I'm sure they have. So if you'd like to bear with us. Councillors, do you have any questions? Do you want me to start?
Yeah, you start.
Okay. Just going back through the application that was made, and on page 29, where there is a list of obviously the licensing objectives. Just want to run through those if I may. On your first one, you've put with regards to, and I'm not going to go through them word for word because I don't like repetition, because obviously we've all read our papers. On the first one that we have here, which is for the general, for the licensing objectives, you've got with regards to working with the local community, businesses, residents associations, council emergency services to comply with national standards to ensure that the objections are going to be met. Can you give us a bit more detail in that on how you propose to work with all of these organisations?
Well, to be honest, other than engaging with them and communicating with them, that was going to be my first way of approaching the matter. I appreciate that making an application for the license, I didn't meet with any of the above, including the parish council, and I think, as I put in my email, perhaps down to my own naivety, more than anything, as I'm inexperienced in this matter. So.
Okay, so when you say you're inexperienced in the matter of obviously engaging with the community, obviously you can see now how important that would have been from the offset. Obviously, it's not something that's legally done, but obviously it helps. With the business of the tap house, is that something that's completely new to you as well? Have you had premises like this before?
So. Yes, I have had a premises, albeit for 3 months in the wake of lockdown, in a premises that I currently have, which is a barn in Launceston Farm. and it was agreed with the landlords that I could have a tap room on a Friday for 3 hours until they gave me further notice, and that only lasted 3 months. So when I say I'm inexperienced, I have experience on that side, but I think because the landlords had made all the necessary connections already within the community, all I got as in terms of feedback was a welcome feedback from the community to say they were really excited to have a tap room or somewhere where they could meet. So I didn't really think beyond that in terms of reaching out to them because they had already reached out to me, if you see what I mean.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to come in now? I have got more.
Yeah, I wanted to just ask you about the capacity for the premises. What is your capacity?
As it hasn't been built, it's hard to say exactly. I believe, having spoken to the landlord, or he's not my landlord, but the gentleman who has organised the planning, that there will be space for roughly 20 cars. So I imagine that could be anywhere up to 50, 60 people at any given time.
Thank you.
Just touching on that with regards to the capacity, your maximum capacity, as you've just said, will potentially be obviously for car parking for 20 cars. Obviously, realistically, you can probably get about 5 people in a car, or if anything, slightly bigger, a van or a minibus. With your maximum capacity, obviously, that would be inclusive of all your staff that you've got on site as well?
Yes.
Right. We're talking about things like fire regulations, etc., etc. Do you understand them? Have you worked with them before?
I mean, I've been in my last license application. I was approached by the fire department, and that was it. I think I had to make my own a risk assessment, but other than that, I'm not entirely sure what else would be expected other than to have suitable fire escapes.
So things like food regulations, etc., are you au fait with those?
I could always be reminded, but as far as I'm aware, when serving cold foods, there's not too much of an issue.
I'm going to come on to Catherine.
I'd just like to clarify regarding the fire are a statutory consultee with for premises licence application, and Mr Peskin would have had a copy of their letter. It does say that he has to do a fire risk assessment upon the completion of the building. That risk assessment will also, once it's complete, should say what your capacity will be. In regards to the food registration, you need to speak to our food people about that. So,
Food people, I love it. Okay. You've mentioned about the risk assessment, which obviously is quite important. And with regards to that, when will you be doing your risk assessment, and who will you let that risk assessment be made available to?
I don't know if I'm quoting Catherine, but in regards to what she's just said, I think possibly once the building has been built, then a risk assessment can be conducted, and as Catherine says, I imagine they'll decide the absolute and maximum capacity, and then once that's been made, the risk assessment's there and available, I could make it available to anyone else who requires it.
I say it is a little strange one because obviously the building is not quite there yet. So yeah, a lot of these will come hand in hand as to when and if obviously your planning is approved. You also put in under the public safety have disabled facilities. What sort of disabled facilities will you have?
Well, this is actually something to consult my partner, as she is a disabled brother. So I would look immediately to get consultation from her and her family. But in terms of access into the building, toilet facilities, maybe even a lowered bar section so that it's easier for disabled people to approach the bar.
Okay, thank you. You've also put in it again, this, obviously you've got your plans for how the barn is going to, you know, you obviously put in plans for how the barn's going to be situated. What are your ventilation areas for that? So obviously you put in there the building has suitable ventilation.
Well, if you don't mind me asking a question, what kind of ventilation would actually be required for a bar or yeah, for a bar?
It's not necessarily the requirement. Obviously, this is a barn. Now, a barn, they're large, they're echoey, you know, and again, with the windows, predominantly, your windows are going to be across the roofing of it. Are you going to have anything sort of like on ground level, wall level, that are you going to have like windows in there or anything that could be opened and closed? Just a general feel for how the building would be.
I can only tell you, having discussed with the landlord, that there is a proposed idea for, in the bar area, a window and maybe a glass front door just to let in light. Whether or not they can be opened hasn't been discussed with me. I don't personally have a need for them to be open.
Okay, obviously, because the reason around the question is obviously it's something that you've put in your application. So what we need to be mindful of is what we're looking at here. If we were minded to grant and put conditions on your licence, we need to make sure that those conditions are reasonable. So we just need to make sure, because there's some there that probably wouldn't be relevant. So just want to clarify as to if you've put them on there, have you put them on there for, you know, for a reason? I understand that it's a new application. These applications, sometimes it's good to put more on there than less. But, you know, so that's why I just want to go through it, because it's all in here. I mean, the incident book, again, that's something that I would expect to see on an application anyway. The only other thing I wanted to touch on with regards to what you actually put on the application was the protection of children from harm. You've got the proof of age shall require for the serving of alcohol for challenge 21. I'd expect to see that as a challenge 25.
Okay, that's fine.
Right, do you have any further questions? Okay. Bear with me, because I've just got, there's a lot of scrolling on this screen. Sorry, it just drives me insane. Yeah. So, with regards to the barn, and obviously you've stated that obviously when we would expect an application to come in with a maximum time frame, because it makes more sense. You've said that it's not going to be predominantly used all of the time. Do you have a need to use it for some? Would it be used for something else, or in the times that you're not using it, or is it going to predominantly be the actual tap house?
It is predominantly the tap house, but I may sit in there to use it as an office of sorts, or if I don't have the space elsewhere, it's hard, obviously, to future-proof every single idea until you're sort of in that space, but predominantly a bar.
And with regards to, I don't want to call them events, so to speak. Obviously, on your opening time, the times that you wanted to open for, for drink and so forth, is that just going to be for local residents to come into, or residents, I should say, or is it? Are you going to have sort of? Is it your intention to have planned events there as well?
I may have planned events. I think, again, part of the reason for putting in an application with the hours I did is so that it may cover you for when you may want to do some special events. But with that in mind, I would always look to approach the community and speak to them before I put on any event.
And how would you liaise with the community with regards to, say you were having an event that was going to go on to, say, your maximum hours that you have? There was going to be a few people there. It's in August. You're going to have people outside, inside, and that. How would you? Yeah, like I said, it's not a requirement, but it's something that we think works in a small community. How would you liaise with your residents?
I'd probably do what I've partly done already, which is approach neighbours and beg and grovel. But I would also approach. I would find the appropriate. I don't know, not head of state, but the sort of linchpins within the community who can get a message out there. And if that is the parish council, then I would approach them and other community leaders. But obviously at this point, I haven't had the direction as to who those people are other than the parish council.
And when, say, you were having an event and it was becoming sort of unbearable for neighbours, say, you've got neighbours, would there be ways and means, would you advertise like a contact number so residents could contact you if they feel as though they are having an issue when you have an event on?
Yes, absolutely. And I think in today's media, I appreciate not everyone has access to internet and things, but there will always be made readily available for anyone to want to contact me, whether it's through email, phone call, Instagram, or whatever means. And I would always take on board and look for compromise and what have you.
It's just good that if there is an event on and people are aware that you're going to have an event and there is a number there, it can ease a lot of the situation to try and deal with it all in an aftermath of somebody complaining to the parish council or whatever, goes, this happened, that happened. It's just sometimes quite easier to say, we're having this event, this person will be on the phone. It's not a line that will just ring out and then you leave a voicemail. It's there that somebody can talk to you should there be any issue. Okay, thank you. Councillors, do you have any further questions?
No, not really.
For the applicant? No. Okay. I don't have any further questions for you at the moment, but we might have some more. But obviously, you will obviously have a chance to sum up at the end anyway. Okay. Is there anything else that you want to add at this time?
No, I'm absolutely fine, thanks.
Catherine, do you have any questions at this time for the applicants?
No, thank you, Chairman, no.
Do you have any questions at this time for the applicant? And it is questions around what you've just heard.
Not at this stage.
Not at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Right, okay, so I will now move on to those of you that have made representation, and if I may, I will start with the Parish Council.
Much, Chair. Of course. My voice goes as soon as I have to speak. We've spent, the councillors and local representatives have spent some considerable time looking at this application. And I'm pleased the issue of the fact that currently it is a barn in a field about 20 yards from this chap's front door has been raised today, because that's exactly what it is. It's a working farmyard at the moment with a tumble-down barn in it. That part of the parish of Holwell is extremely quiet. If somebody has a blown exhaust on their car or dogs start barking at night, you can hear it all the way through to the village. It's extremely peaceful, extremely quiet, and the lane concerned is an amenity for local people who cycle, who ride, who walk, take their dogs, take their horses up and down the lane on a daily basis. It's a single-track lane with wide verges, and currently is extremely peaceful. The point that noise carries a long way, I think, is very important here, particularly you were talking about events, and I'll come to those in a minute. It is a natural amenity for Holwell to have these sort of lanes. It's the reason people come to live there. We are concerned about the noise, the fact that if there are external activities, even seating outside, the noise will carry and will disturb neighbours. We are concerned about lighting and potential pollution there. I was very pleased that we talked about Section H with the supply of alcohol. I think we need to discuss at some point the compromise offer that the applicant has made in terms of licensing days, and maybe that's a question we can come back to. I think the parish councillors initially would have accepted a tap room, so an enclosed structure where people would go in to try the applicant's beer and take off sales and leave. But I think to extend it to on sales with people outside in a field as if it was a pub, and to have events there, I think is too much for that particular area and adjacent to other houses. So we would have a problem with outside seating, with music outside. I also think on the application, the effective date of this is the 1st of June, and I think that needs changing, as there was a meeting on site with the planning officer last week, and I believe that not this applicant, but the landowner is to review and maybe resubmit his planning application. If that's the case, it will go out for consultation for another 21 days. So I think the date in here of the 1st of June needs to be reviewed. You also need to be aware, although I don't like to stress it, we did have antisocial behaviour in Holwell in the last year. In fact, as late as last May, and earlier this year, Little Cottage, which is empty down Peaceful Lane, was broken into and trashed. The police have all the reports. But our village hall, for example, was broken into 3 times last year. Sadly, antisocial behaviour is everywhere. So adding another licensed premises, which is effectively a pub, into a small village lane, which is very remote, and rural policing is under considerable stress at the moment, we feel is of concern. I think those are my comments. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Do you have any questions?
I'll come back to it.
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
No? When you say you've got concerns around the lighting of the area, can you express a bit on that one?
The original planning application was no detail whatsoever, just a sketch of what the building would look like, which was that. So there's nothing about lighting. They're proposing, I'm sorry, this is not to do with the licensing application, but obviously if there's a car park out there, we are concerned about whether there's lighting for the car park. This is deep, dark fields we're talking about at the moment. So how are they going to protect people if they're not going to put some form of lighting up there, which will again disturb the resident, who I'm sure will raise that when he speaks.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to touch on that because obviously a huge amount of lighting that could come from a premise, a licensed premise, would potentially be a public nuisance. I know it can be, I know it's not around the whole alcohol side of it, but it can be. That's the only reason why I touched on it. Obviously, I don't want to get into the ins and outs of planning because obviously that's not what we're there for. And obviously they are two very, very separate applications. But I don't have any further questions. I've obviously read the submission that the parish council has put, and obviously there is quite a lot in there that does relate to planning reasons. And obviously you've touched on some good points, which, I believe would be something for necessarily the applicant. You mentioned about the hours. What sort of hours would you have, because you've said, that the hours that have been applied for, you find are a lot. Would there have ever been a compromise on hours? Because obviously you've said that the parish council had no issue with it being sort of like a tasting place, buy your drink and then go away. Is the issue the fact that it's actually going to be a tap house where people can turn up, have a drink, and obviously then leave?
I think there was, until we saw the licensing application, as you know, says 12 to 11, 7 days a week. And we're going from a tumble-down barn in a field to what looks like a full-on pub in a tiny little lane. So I think there's quite a lot of shock around what the application actually said. And originally, I think the councillor's view was it's not the right place. This is a planning issue, I understand, but the two are linked, and it's unusual to get a licensing application in before there is a... Okay. It's your experience. Far more experience than I. This is the first one I've come across. So it's cart before horse a bit for us.
Yes, there can be. I mean, a lot of things about like people put applications in, or sometimes applications put in. Loud enough, sorry. Yeah. So sometimes the reason that's done, to say somebody wants to open a shop in a village, obviously if they want a licensed shop, if they can't get the license, then sometimes they think, well, there's no point in opening the shop. Again, this would be one, you might want to put in a change of use for a place and have a license for it, but it's just the way a lot of people do it. So it's not uncommon. But it can be a bit strange, yes, because you are almost looking at a bit of a blank canvas. So I fully understand where you're coming from with that one.
To go back to your original question, what would be acceptable? If I'm honest, I'm not sure that the councillors have come up with a view of anything that is acceptable. My understanding of a tap house, and here Mr. Paskin is the expert, is that it's a brewery with an area attached to it where people can go in and try in order to sell the beer. And we have other businesses which are similar in Holwell, where they manufacture something and invite people in to taste. So we understand about that model. It works very well. We understand about the transport, about the smells, about the lighting. It's not that we're inexperienced in managing small business in rural locations. It really just is a case of what is possible, which doesn't disturb the rural tranquility that we have and doesn't impact on the amenities that people have. So the compromise that I saw, which was sent to our clerk, was 2 till 9 on Friday, 12 till 9 on Saturday, and 12 till 8 on Sunday. And all I could say at this point in time is, it's like, how long's a piece of string for us? I think you would have to trial this for a period of time if that's the way it went. to see what impact it would have, both on highways traffic, on noise, on lighting, on ASB. That would be my gut feeling being asked a question I hadn't expected.
Just so you know, and a lot of people are aware of this, there's a lot of people that aren't aware of this. If and when we grant an application, obviously it comes with standard conditions, and then it's down to the subcommittee if they feel that they want to add any further conditions. When a licence is granted, if there's an issue with around the way the premise is being run and the licensing objectives, anyone can call an application in for a review. So that can be anybody, as long as you have evidence that it is not being run to one of the licensing objectives. That will then be looked at by the licensing team, and if the licensing team feel fit that there is good reason and grounds there, then the application will be called back to a subcommittee. Then the subcommittee will review the licence, and the decisions of the subcommittee then can be depending on what's gone on around why this has happened. Then obviously they can add more conditions. They can take away parts of the licence. You could take away the DBS holder. You can actually take away the right for them to serve alcohol at all. Or you can actually suspend the licence until they've sorted things out, or you can revoke the licence. So when we grant a licence, that's not the end of it. It's not as though when people go forward, there's nothing else you can do. But the only reason I say that is because a lot of people don't realise that. And so when you get a licence, not saying that this one would be run out of hand if it was granted a licence, but if there was any issue around there, providing you've got the evidence there, and again, I encourage people to speak to our licensing team because they're a great team and that's what they're there for. And you know, and it can be reviewed. It can be called back in for a review.
Thank you for the clarification.
That's okay. Thank you. I don't have any further questions for you. Thank you for your addition to what you've sent in. That's been really useful. Councillors, do you have any questions?
Just one more. On the application form, the description of the premises is stated as a new build with...
Oh, hang on, because that'll be for the applicant.
Will it?
Yes.
Okay.
Not the parish.
I'll leave it.
No. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't, thank you.
Do you have any questions for the representation from the parish council? And I stress these are questions, not statements, so they're going to, you know, need an answer for a response.
I have no questions.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I will now move on to our second person that's made a representation. That's Mr. Gent. Ms. Gent, is there anything that you would like to add to what you've already sent in to us?
Very little, in fact. Much of what I would say has already been said, so I'll try not to repeat, obviously. When my wife and I moved down to Peaceful Lane 35 years ago, one of the attractions was the very address of Peaceful Lane. And unfortunately, I'm now on my own, and I'm becoming rather ancient, but reasonably modern in outlook. My main concerns are to do with the light, the noise in particular. As I say, those have been covered, so I have little to say on that. I'm also concerned really about the amount of traffic that might ensue from deliveries and so on. At the moment, I walk a dog daily, twice a day, up Peaceful Lane without a lead, dare I say, and without any problem at all. The most number of vehicles that go past me one way or the other is about 6 an hour. That worries me. The state that the even with those few vehicles, the state of the lane and its verges is becoming all right. It's been a very wet winter, on and off, as it were. But those are my concerns. Light and noise. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, do you have any questions? Even obviously we sympathise with obviously the road aspect of it, but that would be something that you would need to put into planning. I know the area. I've been to the area, and obviously you know I know that there are quite narrow roads because it's the countryside. Yes, thank you. Do you have any questions?
No questions. I was just going to clarify the traffic thing again, but you just said that about we can't include that in, so.
Do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay. Thank you both. I will come back to Councillor Barron. I believe you had a question with regards to the, which I believe was for the applicant.
Yes, it is. Right, it's on. My goodness me, this is great. Yeah, in your actual application, you mentioned this: a new build just under 3,000 square feet on a farm made to house a brewery tap room. Right. The brewery will contain 16, I think, hectolitres brew house with 3 times 16 hectolitres fermenters, with scope to expand by adding several more fermenters. Could you explain why you want to expand? It just seems strange. Unless, of course, this is going to be a bigger place, or I don't know.
Yes, sure. Sorry, without sounding facetious, that side of the business, I'm not sure how that's necessarily relevant to my tap room, because they're almost two separate things, in the sense that one is the brewery itself, which is a business, and the tap room will operate as somewhere that serves that beer. The reason for having a tap room in the first place was because any brewery now looking to open really needs to have a point where they can have direct sales to the consumer. So I've, in my business plan, made it so that 5 to 10% of my revenue is through those direct sales. That may change according to my growth of the brewery. If anything, it may get smaller as a part of as a percentage in terms of my revenue. So as I grow, that will mean more with the more fermenters, because most businesses want to grow. I've made a decision to grow up until a certain duty threshold and cap it there, whereas others obviously go on boundlessly. But for it to make financial sense, I've given myself that limitation. So you start off obviously with a few fermenters, and you may grow it up until, in this case, it's limited at, it works out as 18, potentially the equivalent of 18 fermenters. I'd hope that clears things. Yeah. Okay.
If the licence was granted, would you be advertising this business?
As in to the wider public? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think from my experience, albeit a limited experience, it needs to get some kind of traction through advertising. However that advertising is done, whether it's through Instagram or, just trying to find your audience, really. I should point out, and that may be to alleviate any fears, I know that it was discussed about criminal activities. It's my intention, well, in obviously not only working with with police and helping them out, but to create an environment. And I know that when there's alcohol involved, it may be difficult. But I'm trying to create an environment which appeals, without being too exclusive, appeals to certain types of people. It's not a spit and sawdust pub.
Thank you. Councillors, do you have any further questions for the applicant?
Yeah, just a couple of short ones. I noticed from your response to the your music will only be indoors. Are you planning to have the barn doors open?
I think on some it may be only reasonable to have doors open rather than people cooped up in a tap room. But again, the music, in terms of decibels, it's not my intention constantly, certainly anyway. There may be special occasions where the level is increased, and again, all people's concerned would be notified. So that may include a special event. But generally speaking, it's there as background music, not to interfere with conversation. So.
And obviously you've heard about concerns of lighting. Have you got any thoughts on that and how you are going to proceed to do lighting in the car park and lighting in the outside area, particularly?
Yeah, well, when myself and the landlord approached Mr. Gent, we explained, or rather the landlord explained, because he has more of a say on the matter, that there would be a sound barrier created, whether it be through extending a tree line or a fence or some form of sound barrier, which I could only imagine would take into consideration the lighting pollution as well. If there's some kind of physical barrier, then that would it would affect that. In terms of noise as well, I have been told by the landlord that the prevailing wind, I don't know exactly the direction, only that in as much as it's away from the gentleman's particular building. But that's all I was told. I can only go with the information that I was given.
Thank you. Whichever way this goes today, I would encourage you to still have that channel of communication open with locals, because I think it's quite important, especially considering you've got the planning application in force as well. Councillors, do you have any further questions for the applicant?
No.
Okay. Do you have any further questions for anybody?
No.
No. Okay. With that, I have no further questions, so I am now going to move on to summing up, and I always do the summing up backwards. And this is your chance to give us any more information that you feel as though we need to have to make our decision, anything that you want to add. So I will start with the applicant, please. Do you have anything else that you would like to add?
I wouldn't say necessarily add, just to reaffirm a commitment to keep communication channels open with all concerned, the wider community, because I believe in something working for both of us. So, it can only work with both of us. So that's what I want to really say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peskin. I will now move on to Mr. Gent. Is there anything else that you would like to add in summing up?
Sorry. Not used to the. Yes, yeah. No, basically I've said, or I would just question one last comment. When a 6-foot-high fence to keep down, to keep out light, I would simply question that.
Is that something you want to come back on, or welcome to do?
I'm even aware myself of the exact height. Again, this is something that is a work in progress as far as I'm aware from a planning perspective, and something that is to be discussed with the landlord and the other people involved in that. But I would certainly, from my perspective, do everything I could to adhere to those kind of requests that meant it was amenable for everyone.
Thank you, Chair. Just one comment, I think, no, 2 comments I'd like to make. One is, in the light of some of the follow-on, the events that the applicants talked about, there is a village hall in Holwell. It's a very well-loved and currently suffering from after the pandemic, but it will be 100 years old next year. So I'm anxious, I suppose, that the applicant sees himself taking a role which the village hall is claiming. It's a key community asset for us, so it is a concern. And the only other comment I meant was I would endorse your comment about liaising with us. I just wish the applicant for the planning application had done the same, and then things might have been a little better understood a little bit earlier. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Catherine, do you have anything for summing up?
Just to clarify, the need in an area, i.e. like you say about the village hall, cannot be taken into account. As you know, it's a planning matter. And just to reiterate with the music side of it, because of the Live Music Act, nothing can be conditioned before 11 o'clock at night because of the Live Music Act, because Mr. Peskin has on and off sales. Okay.
Thank you. Has everybody had their say? Yes? Good. I will now go to our legal advisor to clarify that we've covered all legal points.
Thank you, Chair. Yes.
Thank you. So now we will retire to have a discussion and make our decision. Anybody that's made representation will be sent out a copy of the decision notice. That decision notice comes out via email. It has, we have 5 working days to send that notice out to yourselves. Once you've received that notice, and that will give you our full decision on there. There is a right of appeal on the notice, and you've got 21 days to appeal of Weymouth Magistrates Court. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, can I have a vote that we go into exempt business, please? Thank you. Okay, thank you everybody for attending and for your time this morning. Appreciate that, and I will now close this part of the meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you.